All right, welcome Kirk here to the Market Ghost interview series. I'd like you to go ahead and introduce yourself to the viewers.
Yeah, Joel, thanks so much for having me. So I am an author and illustrator. I make the Duck and Moose early reader graphic novel series.
Um, Now you're on your third book, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But I was trying to think about this the other day, and we've known each other for quite a while. And do you happen to remember um, when or how we met?
Yeah. So we were both Houston SCBWI buddies, and I'm pretty sure the last time we hung out, uh, not counting one of the conferences, I don't remember the last conference I went to, but we did a sketch crawl over at a zoo at the Houston Zoo. Super fun.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I think we had also bumped into each other at the Bookworm Festival.
Yeah. That's right.
That Blue Willow puts on. But I guess I'll start off with letting everybody get to know you. I guess tell us about your background. How did you get from Kirk, the, uh, the aspiring artist, illustrator, writer, to where you are now?
Well, I went to a teensy tiny liberal arts college called Centenary College in Shreveport, Louisiana, which is where I live right now. I I couldn't decide between music or art. So when you go to a liberal arts college, you don't have to decide. So I double majored in violin performance and studio art. I realized that the classical music world wasn't for me. So I dropped the violin performance major, picked up a communications double major, but then tried to double down on art while I was there. And our college had a resident artist who was the author and illustrator William Joyce. So
Mm.
I got to intern with Bill my senior year. I think he always took one senior student, and I think the pool was so small, I'm not sure if anybody else applied to it. So, I weaseled my way into that, which was at the tail end of the fantastic flying books of Mr. Morris Westmore, the short that ended up winning the Oscar. And I printed a whole lot of posters for that movie and got a whole bunch of people a lot of copy. Really important intern stuff. But then I left college early. We had some family illnesses, so that's when I moved back to Houston. I worked in tech for a little while and realized that I didn't want to be in tech. So my mom got convinced me to work at our neighborhood bookstore, which was Blue Willow Bookshop. So I applied and got in and realized really quickly that Valerie, the owner, was on the advisory board of the American Booksellers Association. So they would do like 300 to 400 author events every year, and uh, so I got to see a whole bunch of my heroes and see a lot more of the inside of the publishing world. Then I decided I wanted to go back to finish my undergraduate degree, so I moved back to Shreveport, reconnected with my wife, or my now wife, got married, and
Mm.
a mere 10 years and 100 rejections and like three style changes and two agents later, I got a book deal.
Yeah. Well, it's. I always find it interesting how fraught the road is getting to the place you're trying to get to. So it's never a straight path. It's always a winding road. Um, Before we kind of get into the nitty gritty of the books, what are your inspirations? Where do you draw from for your creativity when it comes to working on these books?
Oh yeah, well, with these books in particular, so they didn't start out as graphic novels too. It was a picture book idea that I had. In the end of 2020, I left my first agent. We realized we weren't a good fit, and I could not believe I was making that decision at the end of 2020.
Yeah.
But then I sat down and thought, all right, I need some new stuff to be able to send out and to send to other agents. So I drew what ended up being the first duck and moose drawing and thought it was pretty funny. And then the story ended up coming together pretty quickly. But it was a 40-page picture book. I was trying to do the elephant and piggy, like the dialogue is in the different colors of the
Right.
characters, or like a John Klassen, this is not my hat kind of thing. Um, and I ended up signing with my current agent, with Anna Crespo, off of that book. We sent it out for like a year and a half, and nobody wanted it. And so I had put it into a drawer, tucked it away, and the artwork was totally different too. I was using watercolor and pencil and doing some
Mm.
digital retouching on top of that. Uh, then, for a completely different book about a couple of penguins who found a potted plant, Anna sent that out, and I might have shown you like really early versions of that book in Houston, because that I was still working on it back then.
Yeah, it seems somewhat familiar. I remember seeing a, a bunch of like one little scene pieces that you had done. And I'm sure there's stories behind them, but
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
vaguely remember a penguin or a couple penguins in there.
It
Um,
was it was mostly ripping off Oliver Jeffers at that point.
yeah,
As you do. Uh,
yeah.
so nobody wanted that book either, but Disney wrote back and they're like, "Hey, we don't want this book, but we think Kirk is like kind of funny. So, do you have like any other ideas?" And so Anna, my agent, threw every book idea I had ever worked on at them, and the picture book version of Duck Moves In was a part of that. And they said, "Well, we think this book is pretty funny, but have you thought about turning it into a graphic novel?" And I said, "Well, Disney, I'm so glad you asked. Of course I have.
Mhm.
It's my dream to make a graphic
Right.
novel book. Like, give me 2 weeks, and we'll see what we can do." And you know what? At that point, I had switched over to doing pen and pen and ink and digital coloring. So it started looking a little more comic booky, and my agent had convinced me to do a couple of word bubbles. So it wasn't, a total random leap. But I didn't sleep for 2 weeks, turned a 40-page picture book into a 64-page graphic novel, and then they said they or Disney wrote back and said, "Do you have any other ideas for adventures that these characters could go on?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I'm so glad you asked. Of course I do. Here's,
Yes. Yes.
like, give me another couple of weeks."
Right.
I sent them like six or something, and they took one of those, one of those, and then a to be determined book idea, and Anna ended up turning a rejection into a 3-book deal. And the fourth book is coming out in September. And that was actually, I think that was a part of the original pitches that they didn't
Mm.
want. We can talk more about the fourth book later on. But that's the long and winding publishing journey. And while after they had accepted the book, I was still trying out different pins, things like that. So I was using
Yeah.
microns, and I was like, all right, I
Oh,
want the
okay.
line to be a little wonkier. And another Texas author illustrator, Jared Chapman, convinced me to try using a nib pen. So
Mm.
it's a Browse Blue Pumpkin nib. And it was just wonky enough, and just I could get it just thick enough that it worked. I think it worked better, and I I was also really happy to use a nib pin because I wanted the books to look a little bit more like newspaper comics, because I
Mhm.
you know I wasn't a big Marvel and DC guy when I was growing up. Now I'm not afraid to read a Batman comic, but
Mm.
my the comics I love are like Calvin and Hobbes and Peanuts and Beetle Bailey and Hagar the Horrible and Curtis and Boondocks and Luann, and I could go on and on and
Right.
on about the newspaper comics. But yeah, those are all really important to me. So I wanted the style of Duck and Moose to reflect that.
Now, I'm gonna back up a quick second. I'm
Yeah.
curious when you had your book in its shorter, very abridged form as a picture book idea. When the idea of the graphic novel came up, I guess I'm curious about the process at which we take it from you know uh, under 40 pages to much more than that and paneling it as well. So my question for you is, what was the process in which you took things that happened in the picture book, and I guess you kind of extrapolate just things out of those events that happened to kind of, you know, fill it more and more panels?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So, Disney had written back with a couple of revisions that they wanted me to try to, and one of those was like add more motivation for the characters. And so I thought, oh, what does that even mean?
Right.
And, and then I think I added in a whole extra scene too. Um, so I think somewhere in like 2/3 of the way through the book, like I knew the big like climax, but getting there I added one more escalation, so that way I could really drive home the point that Moose was getting ready to really wig out. um so and at that point I was very close to giving up on doing children's literature altogether. So I had been secretly working on a really weird webcomic that that I don't think is going to go anywhere, but I had been practicing doing some more paneling stuff. And then I had also recently discovered like Jelly and Narwhal, the Ben Clanton stuff, and was thinking about dipping my toe more into the early reader space too. Uh, and so when Disney wrote back and asked about turning it into an early reader, I went to my local library and picked up every early reader that I could find, and a bunch of the ones that I loved when I was growing up. So like uh, James Marshall's Fox series, and a whole bunch of the Frog and Toad books and things like that. And I had completely forgotten about them until I opened them up and was hit with like an instant sense memory of like, oh, I loved these things when I was 6 and 7 and 8. And so I tried to use some of that as a love as an influence in making the books too. And I think I'm getting off topic, but
No, that's okay.
I I was getting a little more used to the earlier pacing and just having more pages. So going from the 40-page picture book to a 64-page graphic novel, you've got a little more breathing room too. Because I
Yeah.
mean, I know like you as an illustrator too, 40, 32 or 40 pages isn't a whole lot of space to do a ton of work,
Right.
or have
Yeah.
your characters go through a whole bunch of stuff. So
Yeah, you have a lot less time for the setup. It's kind of like
yeah,
it's taking the fat and just chopping it off and just hitting the points you have to hit. And um that's always actually been my struggles, is that um my brain, I love to world build, and
mhm.
so I that's one thing that I might touch on before we go on, is how do you stop with your demographic that your books are geared towards? How do you stop from overloading that with too much needless information? Because in my brain, I'm thinking, um, background of this character, like what are their family, like I kind of go real deep. I go like, the family,
Mhm.
where are they coming from? How did they get there? So I kind of think how all these experiences of the character kind of feed their personality and their motivations. And so how
Mhm.
do you kind of stop from going too much into the weeds with that kind of stuff?
That's a
Or,
great question.
or is
Uh,
it just one of those
because
things where you just kind of remind yourself, hey, let's not get off the rails here.
well, because even though 64 pages is more room, it's still not a ton of room to do. For me, it feels like making a Looney Tunes episode, right? Like a 7-minute cartoon. So I have
Yeah.
time for like one gag, or like making an SNL sketch. But I try to throw in little like extra Easter eggs and things like that. So
Nice.
Duck adds a picture at some point on Moose's antler, and it's of his parents.
Oh,
So he does
okay.
have a family back home. I like to give my characters secrets that only I know too. So that way, it deepens them for me, but
Yes.
it might not, uh, it might not be totally evident to a reader. Because why would a reader know that a moose secretly goes to a pond to stare at his reflection every morning and whisper affirmations to himself?
Yes. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
I don't think we touched on this, and I was always interested in this, but where did the genesis of the idea for duck and moose? Why not, beaver and moose, or like any other animals? What's duck and moose? Why those
Oh
two?
yeah, that's another really good question. So I and so I was inspired to do this book after a family trip to Alaska, to Denali, Alaska. So I went with my dad, my brother, his girlfriend at the time, my wife, and me, all crammed into a van and roaming around the Alaskan wilds. And when I came back, that was in like 2017. And when I came back to Houston, or sorry, to Shreveport, came back home, I knew I wanted to make some books featuring some of the animal characters or some of the animals that I had seen on the trip. Uh, but none of them worked. So none of those stories ended up working very well until I just randomly doodled a moose and was like, oh, this guy feels a lot like me. So just like Moose, I'm a really big introvert, and the only thing I really want from life is to be by myself. But then I drew a happy duck on top of his head, and I was like, oh, okay, this is really funny. I've got a lot of space to play with these two characters as foils because you've got a size difference, you have a personality difference. I threw all of my little brother energy into Duck too, because I like halfway through making the books, I realized that I also have a bunch of Duck in me, which I think deepened him a little bit more too. But then after I had come up with the characters and decided to set the books into Denali, because I originally I just thought I just had the books in like a random basic forest. And so mountains that sort of looked like mountains and trees that sort of looked like trees. And it never quite felt right. So I set on Denali and then I did a whole bunch of research on the actual plants and flora and fauna that are in Denali. I even emailed an ecologist who works at the national park
Mm.
because you can their emails are public, so you can find their emails. And I was like, "Hey, this is set in spring," and he wrote back and said, "No, it's not, because in spring it still looks like winter here. So you probably want it to be summer." Uh, so I try not to overload information like that into the books, but I do have like the trees are black spruce. It's set in the boreal lowlands, which is again just extra information that I know that
Yeah.
I don't think a reader would necessarily pick up on. And all of the animals are you can find them in Denali. I had to figure out whether or not mallards actually live there.
Mm.
Uh, but in the first book, every single bird you find, except for one, is in Denali, which is a fun little Easter egg. The bird that's not there is the penguin.
Mm.
So I thought I would throw in the penguins for that rejection that I got,
Um,
just to stick it in.
so doing the research, I'm just curious about this too. When you do the research on the type of flora, fauna, do you I guess when we talk about the treatment of how those things are going to be depicted, do you kind of start with the design of your characters once that's kind of settled, and then that kind of guides you in the treatment of how you're going to depict the surroundings? So just because they're based on a certain level of detail and character uh, characterization or caricature. So we kind of try to follow that. Is that we kind of let the characters be the deciding or the guiding force, I guess, in how you show things.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and uh, I try not to get too steadfast to the details too, because I mean, obviously, moose's antlers are moose antlers. Uh, um, but yeah, I wanted everything to look like anyone can draw it too. So I want any kid or adult who hasn't drawn in a while to think, okay, yeah, I could draw duck and moose, and so ex- that philosophy extends to all the trees and the mountains and the clouds and things like that. But I also had really tight deadlines, so I had to draw really fast, and that also worked into the style too.
Right. Well, speaking of style, do you want to kind of show us, kind of take us through some of the early designs of Duck and Moose?
Yeah, sure, that would be great.
All right. So I'm going to slip over here, and I'm just going to let you speak about your designs.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, these are the very first character drawings that I did. And you can see Moose's body looks totally different from how it turned out in the books. Duck's bill has a weird little bottom line there, which I ended up taking out to make it easier to draw and read a little cleaner. And you've got these, scratchy lines everywhere because I didn't know how tall the characters would be or what their shape language would look like. And I didn't do set character designs when I was making the books either. I realized that I would, if I had to make them perfect uh, every time, then I would get bored and frustrated with myself because I'm not good at character consistency either. So I let them, the way that I draw them, develop throughout making the books too. And something that's important with all of these characters is that, or with these early character sketches, I would stick them into the dummy, the book dummy, while I was making it because I knew that I didn't want to make a good drawing. I needed to make a drawing that was good enough for me to move the story forward.
Right. So let me go to the next one. We have the early fiction of the
Yeah,
characters.
yeah. And so, yeah, you can see all kinds of stuff ended up changing. So, like Moose's nostrils ended up going from circles to the forward and backwards C that we have now. His body changed. It was more moose-ish in that first one, or in the early drawing. And I also threw, you can't, I don't think you can make this out. I'm not sure if you can even make it out in the book, but I always try to add uh, extra inside jokes for myself. So the newspaper that Duck is reading, I think it's called the Daily Quack, and it says "Flying V's are out" or "Flying Q is the next big thing," and we've got a little drawing of the Q
I see it. Yeah,
there on the cover.
that's hilarious. And was there any kind of inside joke about the box of spoons, or
Oh
is it just a
yeah,
box of
yeah,
spoons?
that shows up that like a couple times in the book. That saying where you're like, oh, I don't have any more spoons today. Like you're out of
Oh,
energy
right.
or to deal with stuff. So Duck has tons and tons of spoons, and Moose does not. And yeah, the mug there, it says "World's Best Duck," and on the very last page of the first book, Moose is drinking or has a mug next to him that says "World's Second Best Duck" or "World's Number Two Duck."
Right. So this is your process? Is your thumbnails and your ideas pages?
Yeah, yeah. So I don't write the story first, and I don't draw the pictures first either. So the writing and the drawing happens at the same time. And usually I have a sketchbook and like a cheap lined spiral bound notebook. So it feels like I'm making doodles in class or something like that. And so these are sketches from the second book, Moose Blasts Off. And you can see how a whole bunch of stuff ends up changing while I'm making the books too. So on the left top left side, you can see a little doodle of duck and moose sitting on a log, and I realized that there weren't logs that big in Denali, so I changed it to a boulder because I think you could find boulders that big there. I have different dinosaur drawings. So there's a cave duck and a Tyrannosaurus
Yeah, on the
moose,
left side, I see them.
apparently.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. And while I was making those doodles, I realized that duck, instead of just imagining dinosaurs, they should all be duck themed dinosaurs because at he's his first big thing because he doesn't understand imaginative play at first. So he goes like,
right.
I imagine that I'm a duck, and then he starts imagining extra duck. So it's all weirdly duck-ish, and then you can even see the dialogue ends up changing a lot too. So the big Moose's big breaking point is when he says you're ruining astronaut, you're ruining my favorite thing. But up at the top I have him shouting, you don't even know how to play right. So like, I usually know the emotion that I want to go for, but I don't always know how I want to pace it or get the dialogue right. And when I'm making the books too, I always do read aloud tests. So once I have once I have all of these thumbnails where I think I have enough to move forward with the book, I'll shift over to my iPad and use Procreate and draw really, really fast thumbnails at the correct page size and throw them into InDesign so that way I can move them around inside of the document and then export that as a PDF and read it kind of like an ebook.
Now, do you find that do you focus group your books for pacing with strangers? I mean, I always say that loved ones are the worst critics because sometimes they're going to tell you what you want to hear. But do you focus group with any like strangers or children or anybody?
Oh, no.
Okay.
My wife is a great artist and writer, and I cannot show her any of my books until they're done. And then I'm like, hey, I'm just looking for affirmation here.
Yes.
But I do send so I get it to the best point where I can get it. And I know that I get bored pretty easily. So I know that if I get bored while I am doing a read aloud test, that everyone else is going to be way more bored than I am, or if I'm getting stuck on a page or something like that. So, I'll do a lot of revision on my own. I do have a critique group that I'll send stuff to. We'll send each other stuff every now and then. But after that, I'll send it to my agent, and Anna will tell me everything that's wrong with the book, and she's always right. So I'll be a little sadder in my feelings for a while or for a day, and then eventually come around, and then we'll send that over to Regan, who's my editor at Disney, and she'll tell me everything that's wrong with the book too, and she's
Right.
also always right.
Yeah. Well, we have another picture here, so I want you to walk us through this one. Is this a foliage test?
Yeah. So this is a really early test that I was doing with the nib pin and figuring out the kinds of plants that would be there. So the first visual research I do is usually just a sketch or a straight watercolor to try to make it look realistic. So I'll do realistic drawings, and then I'll try drawing it in the style of the books without looking at the visual research too. So I want to see my own version of it, and then I'll kind of revise based off of that if it looks too close or too far away. So we've got bog blueberries, green alder, bog rosemary, birch, and I think that was juniper over there. All of that can be found where the characters live. But with making the books and seeing how fast I had to go through all of that stuff, I ended up simplifying a whole lot of that even more. So, a bunch of the main plants is really just the green alder, but it looks way more those bushes and shrubs look way more simple in the books now too. It's kind of just like a green lump with sticks shooting out of it. And then I do have I'll use a lot of let's see oh, what's it called, Arctic, oh, I'm forgetting the name. Not juniper. It's like a blue plant that kind of looks like blue bonnets, but it's a little different.
Right. Um, okay. I love seeing the process of that stuff. But that's I think that's why I started this website and videos, is because I like to see all the like looking under the hood of the book and seeing like all the how everything works together and in sync, and seeing kind of the laboratory where we have all these different colors and different um, color palettes and plants looked
Yeah,
at
yeah.
and the designs.
Figuring out the color palette was interesting too. So the first version that I had sent over, they asked Disney, the art director, the designer Phil, asked if I could saturate everything more, and I was like, oh, but I don't want. I was like, I don't want candy colors, which is or like a little too intense for me.
Yeah.
But he was right. So like looking at the very that those tests were more saturated too, I
Yes.
think. But the first version of the book, it all looked really washed out and, and like
Mm.
the printer was running low on toner or something.
Yeah. See, I have the opposite problem. Is I find I tend to oversaturate.
Hmm.
And I honestly think a lot of it's just on how our brains work and what we kind of perceive as colors.
Hmm.
So I find myself having to, when I naturally do something, I have to kind of go back and almost throw a filter on it because
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
it's
yeah.
too it's too obnoxious as far as the saturation goes. So yeah, that's interesting. You're the opposite. Okay, so let's talk about the books you have out right now. So our first book was Duck and Moose. Duck moves in, where Duck and Moose meet, and Duck's just really looking for peace and quack, and he happens to find it on the head of a moose. And then your second book was whoopsie was the
Is Moose Blast
Moose
Off?
Blasts Off, where a pretend game did not go the way Moose wanted it to. Um, but I think Moose learned a lot as far as your vision of things is not necessarily the entire vision. And then we went to our next one, which was Duck in the Dark, which was about. And I looked this up because I did not know there's varying degrees of fear of the dark or phobias. There's a few different ones. One has to do with the general dark, and one has to do with the absence of light. I think there might be another one that has to do with the real threat of what may be in the dark, which I thought was interesting. Um, but
That is
the
interesting.
Yep. I because I was when I was looking at the books, I was trying to think about, what exactly does Duck have? And then
Yeah,
I started going down a rabbit hole of phobias. And I was
that
like,
was
okay, I
that was an
wasn't sure.
actual conversation that we had too. They're always like, "What is Doc actually afraid of? Is it just the dark? Is it stuff that's in the dark?" And it for me, it ended up I ended up landing on a fear of the unknown.
Okay.
So he is imagining monsters that are out there, and that's like the tip of the iceberg for him.
Okay. That was it's Yeah, it's just it's crazy how, and children don't need to know about all the phobias, but I just thought it was interesting that I was trying to figure that one out. But let's go on to the next book, and I'll let you talk us through it, and we'll show some sample pages. All right, Duck and Moose, and Moose's Bad Hair Day. So I'll let you tell us all about this next book.
Yeah. Okay. So in this book, Moose wakes up and he is looking a little ragged. So Duck decides to give his buddy a haircut, and in the middle of the trim, one of Moose's antlers pops off of his head, and Duck does everything he can to try to hide that. So we've got you can see Moose looking a little wobbly there. a little wavy. And yeah, there we go. The antler pops right off of his head, and Duck does not know that. This is a spoiler, but Duck doesn't know that moose lose their antlers every year. So
So he thinks he
he,
really broke him.
yeah, yeah, uh-huh. And I think I can't remember if we've talked about this before, but I never actually know what the book is about while I'm making it. So I was like, oh yeah, this would be a funny gag. We can do a whole bunch of Duck trying to hide stuff. And then like two-thirds of the way through making it, I realized, oh, this is about owning up to your own mistake. And when I realized that, I got like a real big like hit in my stomach, and I was like, all right, that's the way we the way we got to go, because apparently I'm trying to process something here
Right.
about myself. So yeah, Duck ends up drawing on it with markers and turning it into his cousin Bernard, who is from Uncertain, Texas, which is a real place. That's a real town in East Texas.
Mm.
And it's basically just a weekend at Bernie's reference too.
I did not catch that the first time I read the book um, about the weekend at Bernie's. That's
Yeah, yeah. I have a strong feeling that whenever, because I love throwing in referential humor and gags and influences and things like that. But I feel like the reference needs to work on its own as a joke in the story, without anyone being able to catch whatever the reference is. So I'm glad that it was still funny without knowing that it was weekend at Bernie's.
yeah. It could have been. I mean, if you would have made it like Weekend at Bernie's Part Two, I would have been like, maybe pump the brakes on that one.
I couldn't just have them sitting in the green grass for 4 books. So I had to figure out what dark actually looks like in the style for Duck in the Dark. And this one was kind of like springish. And oh yeah, okay, this is you know, I think the most unhinged I've ever had Duck in a book. So he breaks Moose's other antler and tries to make them even by plucking out all of the hair on his head, or all the feathers on his head. I think I was maybe working through some of my own hair loss issues.
Yeah, that's hilarious. Yeah, and I think it's great to see how unhinged Duck can get, because if we recall the first book, he was more the chill one and everything was okay, and Moose was just really just annoyed at this other person or other animal, and here we're just seeing him lose his mind because he just doesn't know how to fix it. He thinks he's
Mhm.
permanently broken him.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and the books would be a little boring if it was, because the structure is the same for all of them too. So it's 3 chapters, and each chapter has a 3-act structure. And if Moose was freaking out over the same thing every book, I think it would get old pretty fast.
Right.
And we like to give them turns for messing stuff up.
Okay, now I know you sent me a few of uh your 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 process videos, so I'm going to bring some of those up, and you can talk us through it. And let me bring that up, and here we go.
Yeah, okay. So I do all of my drawing with a red pencil. I have a favorite Prismacolor erase pencil that they don't make anymore. So I'm starting to run low on my box, but I um my drawing is a little clunkier with a pencil too, so that keeps me making the characters and the art as simple as possible. Uh, and then I will. Oh, you know what I should have said? So I do the thumbnails and the sketches digitally, uh, but then when I do the traditional art, uh, for the final inks and things, oh look, we've got a Oliver Jeffers picture back there too,
Yeah.
book back there too. When I do the final art, I don't trace. I just draw uh by looking at whatever I did. So that way it gives me another round of revision for the drawings and the artwork, and it keeps me a little looser and makes things feel a little more fresh. So I don't want the drawings to feel lifeless and stilted. So that
Mhm.
way I still feel like I have room to surprise myself with stuff.
We can see some close-ups of your inks.
That's right.
The
And you can, oh, sorry, what were we going to say?
Oh no, 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 go ahead.
Oh, all right. I was going to say that you know you can see I wanted the ink work to look wonky and wobbly, and I usually leave a whole bunch of mistakes in the art too because I want them to look not totally perfect. But when I scan the artwork in, I remove the red in Photoshop and do all the digital coloring there. But you can see how I kind of just use the pencil as a guideline. I'm
Mhm.
still trying to figure I'm still trying to figure stuff out, and I might change the speech bubbles in post and stuff like that. That I don't remember if I have the blast off coming from that direction in the second book. It's been a little while since I've made it.
Now, what was
Oh
your
yeah, yeah,
decision?
yeah.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I think. Oh, sorry. I think I ended up deleting because I've got two dialogue tails there. So I think I ended up deleting that first one for blast off with Moose. So that way it felt a little more clear for the reading experience. So I try to make sure that since they're early reader graphic novels, I try to have a clear line of sight from where every dialogue bubble is going. So it's always really clear who is speaking in the order that you're supposed to read the text in.
Now, I guess, do you find, are there pros and cons to including the speech balloons or word bubbles or whatever you call them in the original art versus adding them in, I guess, would be digitally with Illustrator or Photoshop?
Yeah, so many. so uh sometimes I might draw myself into a corner, or I might have to redo something if the speech bubble isn't working right. Um, they I like that they look uh, a little wonkier, but I often that's usually the stuff I have to edit the most in post whenever the text comes uh, back and is placed by the designer by Phil. Uh, because sometimes it doesn't fit, even though I write the text and it doesn't fit the word bubble, and so then I just have to adjust things as best I can.
Right.
Um, yeah, I think I probably made a mistake doing that, but I just doubled down and stuck with it.
Yeah. Here's
I
a
do like that it feels a little more handmade, though. Um,
Yeah, and you do notice that I think when you're looking at graphic novels and comics, is there's a certain feel for when the bubble is part of the artwork versus it there feels like there's some degree of separation when it's done digitally. It just feels
yeah,
different.
yeah, and you could see a couple of the imaginary ducks there too, and some imagination blobs. For this book, I had to do was like illustrating two books together. So I did all of the pencil stuff in uh or all the imagination stuff is in pencil. I used Blackwing pencils
Mhm.
and used a tracing board to go over everything there because I needed things to look a little I needed to digitally color the ink there. And so we've got some of my supplies here. So that's the Rouse Blue Pumpkin nib up close. I also have a blade pin. That's the bronze looking stick thing over there. I'll use that for all the effects.
Mhm.
Um, and that's made by a comic artist named David Barry, who lives over in the United Kingdom. Uh, let's see, we've got my signing pins there. You can see how I actually sit down to write the books. So I am thumbnailing in two places because I never make up my mind very
Right.
well. This is for the third book for Duck in the Dark, and so I couldn't decide how long to make the like setting up camp for the sleepover stuff. So you can see I was trying to figure out, do they actually unfold their sleeping bags, and I ended up not having time for that uh, in the book. So there wasn't space for that in the story. So I think I ended up deleting that. But that's something you don't know until you stick it all together and try reading it as an actual book.
Now, one thing I noticed is that your studio seems fairly meticulous. Now, is that something you did for the video, or is it normally pretty clean? Because I have a theory that sometimes clarity of space equals clarity of mind. Um, but I also kind of look at my studio like it's my playground and it's my man cave, I guess. And so mine's like super saturated with images, and
Mhm.
I've always wondered if maybe simplifying my workspace would make it easier to be creative, or I would just look around on the walls and see everything that I kind of have taken as sort of a muse. How is your
Mhm.
approach to your studio space?
Well, I'm a slob, so it gets messy really fast. And there's a reason why I have not moved the camera
Okay.
because it is really uh, messy down here. I'm always trying to add extra shelf space because, especially when I'm doing the final art, I've got a flat file that's next to my drafting table that I ended up buying because I kept on just throwing all the paper onto the ground, and then I would lose track of it. So now there's a flat file, but I still have a bunch of paper on the ground. Um, I am not good at hanging art too, so that's why my walls are pretty blank. I also am I have two workstations. So I'm at my digital workspace right now, where I keep my laptop and my tablet, and then I have to turn around and go over to the drafting table back there. So that's where I do my sketches and all of the final art because I get distracted really easily. So if I have
Mm,
the option to check my email or something like that, I will do that and then not work. So
right.
it's really helpful not to have a computer screen and stuff like that there. You know, every now and then I'll cheat and bring my laptop and have a movie going while I'm working, but uh, I really try to make sure I'm not uh, doing too much computer stuff over on the drafting table.
Now, speaking of
Um,
computer stuff, I'm sorry. I wanted to show
sure.
this because I skipped over it. It's a little video of you doing your digital work, and I thought maybe you'd want to kind of talk us through um, how you color the piece.
Yeah, not the smartest way. So, you can see I've got a whole bunch of layers there. So I'm in Photoshop right now, and whenever I do the flats for the characters, I outline the shape, and then with with an actual brush pen, or with your basic Photoshop brush, and then fill that shape, and then I'll add textures as clipping masks and shadows as clipping masks on top of that, and that's because I've a lot of comics colorists will do the marquee tool to try to outline the shapes and then fill based off of that. I have a hard time seeing the marquee tool, so having the pen outline or the color outline is helpful for me. But I also don't close my pen the inks there, so there I don't have a lot of closed shapes there, so I can't just use the fill bucket, which would have been so much faster.
Now I see your left hand is it on the keyboard, or do you have shortcuts on a keypad, or
It would be way smarter to have shortcuts on the keypad. I'm often just using the trackpad, and I
okay?
don't have. This was like a teensy tiny $50 Target desk, so I don't have room for like a mouse and stuff either. So I really, I've got the ergonomic grip on the
On the
on the
pen?
on the pin because I started getting really bad carpal tunnel
Yes.
stuff, and so I really had to. I've really had to make sure I'm taking care of myself.
Yeah, there's actually a really good book out there. I'm not sure if you heard of it. I don't have it. I think I have it at my
Oh, is
school
it the
because I
flex stretch?
no. There's
Um,
a book about. I could put it in the comments below or into the information about the video, but it's a book about taking care of yourself from a health standpoint for cartoonists. As
mhm.
on the cover has I think a girl. I think the author is a woman, and she's like working at the table. But it talks about is that are you familiar with that one?
Yeah. I think I think we're talking about the same thing. I
Yeah.
also have a memory of a goldfish, so I often misremember stuff. But yeah. So I also, this desk. I'm a tall person, so I'm like around 6'2", and that means that a lot of furniture isn't built for me. So I'm usually hunching over my desk, which was really not good for me. So I've raised all of my stuff up as much as I can so that I'm sitting at the right angle. Um, so I've got, on my laptop here, it's on top of like two boxes and a laptop stand, and then I usually have my tablet on top of an extra platform or two.
Now, one thing I wanted to show is you had an art show for Duck and Goose. Or, I'm sorry, Duck and Moose. Jeez, all these birds. Duck and Moose. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put those slides up, and then I will have you kind of walk us through it and tell us what we're looking at.
Yeah. Okay. So to launch the books in Shreveport, where I live, I wanted to do something very special. So I did the big launch in Houston at Blue Willow, where I used to work, since that's my home store, and I wouldn't be here without them. But I wanted to honor the community where I live too. So I went to my alma mater and asked their museum director, Alyssa, if she would be interested in having me be a class project for a semester. And thankfully, they were. So I worked with a whole class of intro to museum studies students to go through all of the very early sketches to finished illustrations of the Duck and Moose books, and it was like opening up your diary to people. And so yeah, you can see there those are first early sketches of the characters. You can see in the background in the far right, that was one of the very first attempts at doing watercolor illustration for Moose, and one of the early digital art attempts too. Uh, we've got the thumbnails that people can see, the all the um, first book dummy drawings too, because I did those in just in pencil instead of sketching digitally. Uh, and then yes, we went to we it was really important to me for me to show how I revise from the early thumbnails to the slightly more refined sketches and then eventually to the final art. So that way when kids or adults are walking through, they can be like, "Oh yeah, all right, I see what he's doing. I can draw better than those thumbnails or those sketches." Uh and let's see, there we go. We've got, and so I mentioned that I always try to leave room for me to this is a TV writing thing, but punch up the humor. So I do a lot of humor revision, and those curtains are one of those. After I did the final art, they were just beige, plain beige curtains, and when the test print proofs came back to me, I kept on being like, it's not funny enough. And so, like I really wanted to be able to land on, because that's a page turn, and so you really need to stick the landing on the humor there. And so I thought it would be funnier if I made them pink and filled them with hearts, because that's not calming at all. And thankfully, we had just enough time in the production process for me to stick that revision in. And there you can see in that one
It looks
how
like
I
this
ended up.
the same page, but the final's at the top.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Uh-huh. And so this is when Duck says, "Hey, I just unpacked all of my stuff over here. I thought I'd invite you over for a movie night." This is okay. Yeah, those are digital sketches down there. So this is something that I think this is something that I added uh after the first book dummy. I know I had Duck move next door, but I didn't have him apologize. That's what it was. He didn't apologize in the first version,
Mm.
which I thought was a little more accurate to my relationship with my brother and my friends. We often didn't apologize after being jerks to each other,
Right.
but people had a big problem with that, understandably. So I I I ended up having Duck apologize and model good model better behavior than I certainly exhibited when I was 6 years old. Um, so that's why the panels on this really didn't change that much.
Mhm.
You can see that in the final art, I did change Moose's where Moose's hooves are. I had them go onto the ground, and I zoomed out a little bit because I didn't
Right.
like that you couldn't see all of his mouth. But I don't think that was part of an art note that I had gotten either. I think I just did that on my own because I uh, often dislike the art. And oh, okay, they're the purple flowers too. I remembered the name. It's
Mm.
Arctic lupine.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Now you do something else that I want to cover. You do something that you've been doing for a little while called Squiggle Party. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up some of those images, and I'm going to let you tell us about what Squiggle Party is.
Yeah, okay. So for Squiggle Party, when I got the notice that uh Disney wanted to buy the books, I went, "Oh no, I need to make a newsletter, an author newsletter, like right now." And I thought, okay, what is something I'm already doing that I could use as a newsletter? And this was back in the days when Twitter was a place where you could exist, and I would find little funny little memes and prompts and say somebody write this picture book. And so I thought, what if I try to write that picture book? So I made a newsletter called Squiggle Party, where I will take one of those memes or like a prompt from somewhere, and then I will do a squiggle drawing, which is I learned this from the cartoonist Linda Berry, who learned about it from a British psychoanalyst named Donald Winnicott. You draw a little squiggle and you turn it into a character or something. And so for this exhibit, I did 7 prompt pieces and had 45 entire squiggle drawings. But the big piece, which is what you're on right now, is the squiggle wall. So I convinced the museum staff to let me turn a 14-foot long wall into an interactive art experience. So any kid, any adult could draw on that wall. And so that way they could be like, okay, my art is up here on this museum wall, just like this who has his art up on the wall. So I could see myself doing this in the future too. It ended up being a huge hit. They were really nervous about it at first, but they had to replace that wall like 8 times during the summer
Wow.
exhibit. So it's like I really should have brought my calculator with me. It was 100 some odd pieces of feat of community art. My favorite story with this one, though, I don't think you can see it on this one, but the museum had this quiet older woman who was just a regular. She would always stop by. She was always really prim and proper, and never really spoke to anyone. But I had a whole bunch of like I started the drawing and then wrote to whoever would pass by to finish the drawing, and I had a eagle head, and she turned it into this really buff eagle with some kind of risque tattoos, who was wearing a polka dot momo. The staff could not get over the drawing. Yeah, okay, here we go. You can see one of the prompt pieces now.
I see
So
right there.
yeah, so this one was Tooth Fairy. So you can see the squiggle, the character, and then the like a finished illustration. And there's a little QR code on the prompt too, so you can see a video of me drawing the character. But this one was inspired by some article that talked about how wolves lose their baby teeth, and
Mm.
I didn't know that at the time. I should have realized that because they're mammals, and mammals lose their baby teeth. So it made me think about like, well, what is there a wolf tooth fairy? Is it the same tooth fairy for everyone? Uh, Maybe there's the big bad wolf is just kind of hungry, and so he's pulling out his teeth to try to trick a tooth fairy into letting him eat the fairy. And so I'll have a whole bunch of questions uh, to lead the participant through making their own version of the story. And something I always like to do with or say to kids and adults with this drawing exercise is that it's not about making a good drawing; it's about making a drawing that surprises you.
Right.
So
Right.
that way you're not stuck on trying to make something that's good, or if you don't feel like you can draw very well, you can always make a surprising drawing.
Yeah, and I think it's a great prompt because as a teacher, I always find that students have a hard time just generating an idea. And I tell them, you know, creativity is like a muscle. You got to work
Mhm.
it a lot. And the more you work it, the easier the lifting gets. So
Yeah.
the prompt of a squiggle and turning that into a character and then taking that and moving it into an illustration, I think is a great prompt for that I think lots of people can use, and even my daughter would love to use that. Actually, I've done that before. I grabbed her sketchbook, I doodled in there, and she kind of turned it
Uh-huh.
into something. And she doesn't know what I'm doing, but I'm kind of molding her to kind of use her brain in that sense. But I guess it'd be an honor if you would be able to show us some drawing and maybe draw duck and moose for us today.
Yeah,
All right,
absolutely. Okay, let me switch over
sure.
to my document camera.
Okay,
There
let
we
me.
go.
I'm gonna
And
take you to full screen.
cool. And let me make sure that it is focused. There we go. It went off of manual focus. So bear with me while I get this thing looking right. Uh, How does that look? Is that okay?
Yeah, that looks pretty crisp.
Yeah. Okay, great. All right. So let's start with drawing Moose. So Moose is pretty grumpy, and so we start with a frown. Then for his antlers, we do two straight lines going up, and then a little C, a big C, and a medium-sized C, then a backwards little C, a big backwards C, and a medium-sized backwards C. Two dots for eyes so he can see you, a loop for the ear with a line through it so he can hear you. I always tell kids that I get pretty hungry. I like to snack when I draw, so a bunch of duck and moose ends up looking like food. So moose's snout is like a big jelly bean, and then we do a
I was gonna say
forwards.
Cheeto, but I think jelly
Oh
bean's
yeah,
better.
yeah, yeah, I can see that. Look, it's up to you. It's your snack of choice. All right, a straight line and a loop for the mouth. Straight line going down. Moose's body is kind of like a long triangle, and then we'll do macaroni noodle arms with a little square up at the top for his hooves. His tail is a straight line with three. That's not an upside down. See, I don't know. They're three little bumps, three little upside down bumps. His legs are like even longer triangles. I have them go a little wider down at the bottom, and then little. They aren't squares. They're like trapezoids for the bottom hooves. And there you go. We've got moose. Now let me ink this one too. So I've got my ink right here. I use Black Magic waterproof ink, and it's matte black. And the reason why I use this is that it is what was available to buy at Michael's.
There you go.
You got to use what you have. So let's see. Let's see how we're doing here. Yeah, okay, that's fine. Um, I usually have a test piece of paper with me, so uh, I don't I don't do the test lines on the art paper. And I try to draw. This might look slow to the viewers, but it's faster than I draw with pencil. So I try to go pretty quickly and not overthink things. And you can see that I'm getting some variation with the line by pressing down hard or lightly.
Now, when you're changing the line weight slightly, is it when you're coming into a shape or pulling out of a shape, or is there any kind of logic? I guess is it a stylistic thing, or is it something that have you developed, or is it just kind of instinct?
You know, mostly it was happy accidents, but
Okay.
I try to do thicker lines on the bottoms of shapes. That doesn't always happen because I'm not actually a very good inker. Uh, so, you know, if there's someone who really knows what they're doing with the ink, then you know, they can draw circles around me. But yeah, I always try to go a little thicker on the bottom so that way it feels like there's an actual reason to the weight. If something is really off kilter and I don't have time to fix it, I'll use the warp tool in Photoshop to mess with it in post a little bit. Because my line work is already wonky, and that uh, the warp tool makes it not look totally. It still retains a whole bunch of the what was I saying? It still retains a whole bunch of the style, the way that I draw it. If I rotate it or make
Mhm.
something a little wider, it still looks wonky enough. And I really try not to worry about making making mistakes with this stuff. And actually, I'm a pretty impatient inker too. So uh, when I was first starting, I would always accidentally stick my hand on top of the
Right.
wet ink and have to completely redo uh, the whole piece. So I've started getting better. I started knowing when when to ink where. And let's see, what else does this thing need? I guess my signature. And this is looking a little extra soupy because I did not was not a responsible artist and did not clean my nib very well. So there's a little extra uh, goop. All right, let me move on and do and try doing duck. Yeah, I also learned that am not the kind of artist who can have expensive tools because I never
Uh,
remember to clean them. All right, I'm gonna go a little faster on Duck. So his head is a candy cane with two dots for eyes, a jelly bean for his bill, a couple straight lines and a bump, then a straight line for his back, a sideways V for his tail. He is happy, so we're gonna do a smile, a couple lines for the little white neck part because he's a mallard, a wing, two straight lines for his feet. We'll do a wing out here so you can see the way that I do the finger feathers. So I do one long one, kind of a bigger one, and then maybe one or two small ones. And then his feet are little triangle Doritos.
mm,
I think they look like nacho cheese Doritos.
yes.
All right.
Now, when you do like your you do appearances, whether it's at a
Uh-huh.
school or at a an event, do you do like a draw along with the audience or the children?
Yes. Yeah, so I'll do a live drawing demonstration, and you can see that I did not wipe my nib pin off like a responsible artist would, which is why it's like
Yeah.
uh extra inky up there. So, always clean your materials, people. I did not bring my rag with me. It's over on the it's over on the other table. Okay, a couple of eyes. So what's nice is that these nibs aren't that expensive. So if I really mess one up, it's not hard to replace it. And they if your viewers don't know, the metal tip just pops right off. And I'm using an ergonomic one. So it's got little the wood part has some flat parts to keep your hand a little healthier. So you don't grip quite as hard. All right, there we go. We've got ourselves the goopiest duck.
Oh, that's great.
But yeah, so whenever I do school visits, I'll draw the characters, and then I always do squiggle drawings too. And so I'll have a teacher come up to I'll have the kids nominate a teacher to come up to draw the squiggle, and then I'll draw a character based off of it, and then I'll have a kid come up and draw a squiggle too.
I think it looks great. I would have not guessed the process of doing that. I start a little. I always start with the head. I think the head's a great place to start because it gives a scale
Mhm.
for everything else. But I love seeing the original, and I love seeing ink. I just love seeing the mess sometimes. It's, uh, it's a nice process. Um,
Yeah, yeah, I really struggle with drawing on a tablet. I always feel like it doesn't have quite as much life as my traditional drawings do.
right.
And it just always looks like a little crummy to me.
Yeah.
I know people who can draw great digitally. I just don't have that skill.
Well, I think you're doing a fine job, Kirk. Fine job. Well, I guess before we wrap it up, is there anything you want to add before we kind of put a pin in this?
Yeah, okay. Let me say when the fourth book comes out.
Okay. Yo, please.
Moose's Bad Hair Day is publishing on September 2nd. It'll be available wherever books are sold. Check my website for events. I know I'm going to launch it in Houston on September 6th, Saturday, September 6th at 4 p.m. at Blue Willow. But I'm working on some Shreveport events and maybe a couple other Louisiana ones and a book festival to be determined.
Awesome.
I don't think they've announced that yet.
All right. Well, I'm just going to share some things, and here's where you can find Kirk. You can find Kirk at www.kirkreedstrom.com, and I will let you talk about your social media. Oops, there you
Yeah,
go.
okay. So my website has my newsletter sign up if you want to join the Squiggle Party. I'm also on Instagram and Facebook. Facebook is Kirk Reedstrom Books. Instagram is Kirk Reedstrom. I've got a YouTube channel and I'm on Blue Sky, so you can find me there. I think the last thing I post was some Alien Earth fan art. I just started watching that series.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Kirk, so much for joining me on our inaugural or our pilot episode of Art Interviews. And thank you so much again. I appreciate
Absolutely.
it.
One
Oh,
more thing. Can I tell you what I'm reading right
sure.
now?
Do it.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So my friend Sandra Salisbury has a brand new picture book out called "The Baby Who Stayed Awake Forever," and it is a perfect picture book for any new parent or any older parent who wants to relive that horrible time of
Nice.
no sleep, horrible, brilliant time of no sleep. Yeah, it's one of those books where like you read it and you get a little upset by how good it is.
Yeah.
And then I've been reading over Cloud Puppy, which is another graphic. It's another graphic novel series by Kelly Lee Miller. It's it's perfect, and again, one of those books that makes you a little upset by how good it is. I think the second
Awesome.
one just came out. The third one should be coming out pretty soon too.
Awesome. Well, I hope we can have you on again, maybe when the fifth book comes out, or the
Yeah,
sixth, or
fingers
the seventh.
crossed.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks again, Kirk. I appreciate you're a gentleman and a scholar.
Thanks so much, Joel. This was a blast.
All right. Thanks a lot.